The morning sky over New York City turned dark at exactly 9:47 a.m. It wasn't clouds. It was metal, massive ships that stretched across the horizon like floating mountains. They appeared over every major city on Earth simultaneously. London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, all of them covered in shadow. Maria Santos was cleaning room 2047 when the lights flickered. The television, mounted on the wall, switched on by itself. Every channel showed the same thing. A creature that looked almost human, but wasn't. His skin had a blue-gray tint, and his eyes were too large, too bright. He wore armor that seemed to absorb light. "People of Earth," the creature said. His voice came from everywhere, televisions, phones, radios, even the emergency speakers in the hallways. "I am Emperor Vexenaar of the Galactic Concordat. Your planet has been observed for many cycles. You have reached the stage where you must join the greater galaxy or be left behind." Maria's hand stopped moving. She had been wiping down the bathroom mirror, but now she just stood there, cleaning cloth in hand, watching. "However," the Emperor continued, "there is a question among my advisors. Some believe humans are too violent, too unpredictable. They want your world controlled, limited, watched. Others believe you have potential for greatness. I have decided to let you prove which view is correct." The image changed. Now it showed a massive creature, easily 8 feet tall, covered in dark armor with blades built into the forearms. Its face was hidden behind a helmet, but its presence radiated danger. "This is Corvan, champion of the Concordat. He has fought in 10,000 duels across 200 worlds. He has never been defeated. You will send forth your greatest warrior. They will fight Corvan in single combat. If your warrior wins, Earth joins the Concordat as equals, free, independent, respected. If your warrior loses, Earth will be governed by our military authority until you prove ready for independence." Maria felt something cold settle in her chest. She knew exactly what military authority meant. She had seen it before, 30 years ago, in places most people on Earth didn't know existed. "You have 72 hours, Vexenaar said. "Choose wisely." The screens went black. Then the regular broadcast returned, but they were all chaos. News anchors stumbled over words. Military experts shouted opinions. Politicians appeared, trying to look confident and failing. Maria finished cleaning the room slowly, mechanically. Then she cleaned 5 more rooms. She ate her lunch in the staff break room while her co-workers panicked around her. "They'll send those Navy SEALs, right?" one housekeeper said. "Or maybe that fighter, the one who won all those championships." "I heard they're testing everyone," another replied. "Looking for the strongest, fastest person on Earth." Maria said nothing. She just ate her sandwich and watched the news on the break room television. By the second day, Earth had made its choice. A Marine named Captain Derek Morrison stepped forward at the United Nations Plaza. He was impressive, 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle, trained in every combat style known to humanity. Cameras followed him everywhere. He looked like a hero from a movie. Maria watched him on the television in room 3012. She watched him answer questions with confidence. She watched military analysts explain why he was the perfect choice. She watched demonstrations of his skills. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the Zarketh slavers she had fought 3 decades ago. She thought about the refugees she had helped escape. She thought about the tactical programs she had written, the battles she had fought, the things she had done that still haunted her dreams. She had promised herself she would never fight again. She had buried that person deep inside. Maria Santos, the maid, was peaceful, kind, invisible. That other person, the one with different skills and terrible memories, she had locked that person away. But she knew something the military experts didn't know. She knew the Zarketh. She knew how they thought, how they fought, what they valued. Captain Morrison was strong and skilled, but strength and skill weren't enough. Not against a champion who had fought for centuries against species humans had never even heard of. On the 3rd day, Maria put on her cleaning uniform and took the subway to the United Nations Plaza. A massive crowd had gathered. Captain Morrison stood on a stage, surrounded by world leaders and military officers. The Zarketh ships hung overhead, waiting. Maria pushed through the crowd. Security tried to stop her, but she kept walking. Something in her eyes made them hesitate. She walked past the barriers, past the soldiers, past the politicians. She looked up at the ships above and spoke clearly. "I will fight." The crowd went silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then everyone started shouting at once. Security guards rushed toward Maria. A general yelled into his radio. News cameras swung in her direction, zooming in on the small woman in a hotel uniform standing calmly in the middle of chaos. She looked ordinary, barely 5'5", graying hair pulled back in a simple bun, hands rough from years of cleaning work. "Ma'am, you need to leave immediately," a security officer said, reaching for her arm. "Wait." The voice came from above, amplified across every speaker. Emperor Vexenar's face appeared on the giant screens surrounding the plaza. He was staring down at Maria with an expression no one could quite read. "Bring her closer. I want to see her face." The security guards looked confused, but they didn't stop Maria as she walked forward. Captain Morrison stood on the stage looking annoyed and bewildered. The Secretary General of the United Nations tried to apologize to the Emperor. "Your Majesty, this is just a confused civilian. We'll remove her and—" "Show me her eyes," Vexenar interrupted. Full display on all screens. The cameras focused on Maria's face. Her dark brown eyes filled every screen in the plaza, every television on Earth, every viewing station across the Concordat's territories. She looked directly into the camera, unflinching. On his flagship high above Earth, Emperor Vexar stood up from his throne. His hands gripped the armrest tightly. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but the translation carried clearly. "Silent storm," he said in his own language. Then in English, "The one who ended the wars." An older Zarketh commander standing beside him went completely still. "That's impossible. The silent storm disappeared 30 years ago. She would be—" "Look at her eyes," Vexer said. "My father made me study the recordings. He said if I ever saw those eyes again, I should be very, very careful." Down on Earth, the news network scrambled. Within minutes, they found the sealed military files. A young reporter's hands shook as she read the declassified summary on air. First Lieutenant Maria Elena Santos, United Nations Deep Space Reconnaissance Program, mission designation. Shepard 7. Launched in 1995, returned in 1997. Mission details are, they're mostly redacted, but there are casualty reports here. Zarketh casualties. Thousands of them. The files told pieces of story. Maria's small ship had been surveying the outer edges of known space when they received a distress signal. They found refugee ships fleeing from Zarketh slave traders. Protocol said to observe and report. Maria had ignored protocol. With a crew of only 3 people and 1 lightly armed reconnaissance vessel, she had attacked a slaver convoy. She should have died. Instead, she won. Then she kept winning. The freed slaves told her about other camps, other ships, other colonies. Maria didn't go home. For 18 months, she stayed out there. She learned the Zarketh language, studied their tactics, found their weaknesses. She trained former slaves to fight. She turned desperate refugees into soldiers. Her tactics were brilliant and brutal. She attacked supply lines. She sabotaged communications. She made the Zarketh commanders paranoid, always looking over their shoulders. She won battles she had no right to win, with fewer people, less equipment, and no support from Earth. 14 colonies freed. An entire sector of Zarketh space thrown into chaos. The Empire lost more ships to Maria Santos in 18 months than they had lost in the previous century. Then she vanished. The official report said her crew died in the final battle. Maria returned Earth alone, requested her record be sealed, and disappeared into civilian life. "Why did you stop?" A reporter shouted at her now. "If you were that good, why did you become a maid?" Maria turned to face the crowd. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Because I saw what I became out there. I was good at war, yes, too good. I stopped feeling when I pulled the trigger. I stopped seeing faces, just targets. When my crew died and I came home, I realized I had become the thing I was fighting against, someone who solved everything with violence. She looked back at the cameras, at the Emperor watching from above. I chose to clean hotels because every room I clean, I make something better without hurting anyone. I chose kindness over killing. I chose to build instead of destroy. Then why are you here now? The Secretary General asked. Maria's expression hardened. Because I know what the Zarketh do to conquered worlds. I've seen it, and I know that Captain Morrison is a good soldier, but he's never fought aliens before. He'll lose, and when he loses, millions will suffer. She paused. I don't want to be a warrior again, but I won't let innocent people pay for my peace. Emperor Vexenar's voice came from the speakers, carrying a strange mixture of respect and concern. Maria Santos, the woman who made my father's generals afraid to sleep. Do you truly wish to fight again? Maria looked up at the ships overhead. No, but I will. The Zarketh transport ship arrived at dawn. Maria stood in the UN Plaza, wearing simple gray clothes, carrying nothing but a small bag. World leaders had argued with her for hours, begging her to refuse, saying it was a trap. She had listened politely and ignored them all. I know their customs, she said. If I refuse the pre-combat rituals, I forfeit. This is how it must be. The transport was smaller than the warships, but still enormous. Its ramp descended with a hiss of hydraulics. 4 Zarketh soldiers emerged, wearing ceremonial armor. They stopped when they saw Maria, their expressions hidden behind helmets. One of them removed his helmet. He was young, perhaps the equivalent of 20 human years. He looked at Maria with curiosity. You are the challenger? I am. You do not look like the stories described. Maria smiled sadly. The stories are 30 years old. People change. The young soldier escorted her up the ramp. As she walked through the ship's corridors, she noticed other Zarketh watching from doorways and side passages. Some looked amused. Others looked curious. But the older ones, the veterans with scars and medals, they looked different. They looked worried. She heard whispers in their language. She still understood it perfectly. Is it really her? Look at how she walks. Aware of every exit. My commander served in the Outer Rim. He said she was like a ghost. They brought her to a large room with windows overlooking Earth. The room was comfortable by Zarketh standards. Simple, clean, with a sleeping platform and basic facilities. A guard stood outside her door. Maria sat by the window and looked down at her planet. It seemed so peaceful from up here. She could see the curve of the horizon, the clouds drifting over oceans. She thought about her apartment, her job, the co-workers who knew her as quiet. Kai Maria who always helped with the heavy carts. Hours passed. She meditated, something she had learned after the war, to quiet the memories. She wrote letters on paper the Zarketh had provided, one to her sister Manila, one to her nephew, one to the hotel manager thanking him for the years of employment. The door opened. A massive Zarketh entered, so tall he had to duck. He wore no armor, just simple clothes. His face was covered in ritual scars. This was Corvan, the champion. Maria stood and bowed slightly, a sign of respect in Zarketh culture. Corvan studied her for a long moment. I read the archives about you, what they allowed me to see. And you fought like you had nothing to lose. I didn't, Maria said quietly. I had already lost everything that mattered. My crew, my friends. I was fighting on borrowed time. Corvan moved to the window, standing beside her. For a moment, they just looked at her together. I have fought warriors from 2 underworlds. Some fought for glory. Some fought for honor. Some fought because they love violence. He glanced at her. Why do you fight now? Because if I don't, others will suffer. That's the only reason I need. You do not want to win glory for your world? Maria shook her head. Glory is for people who don't understand what war costs. I just want to make sure Earth stays free. Then I want to go back to my quiet life. Corvan was silent for a moment. In 10,000 duels, no one has ever said something like that to me. Maybe you've been fighting the wrong people. The champion left without another word, But Maria noticed he looked troubled. That evening, Emperor Vexenar himself came to her room. His guard stayed outside. He was younger than Maria expected, perhaps 40 in human years. He carried himself with the weight of responsibility. "My father told me about you before he died," Vexenar said, standing by the window. "He said you were the most dangerous human he ever encountered. Not because you were cruel, but because you understood us. You learned our language, our tactics, our culture. Then you used that knowledge to defeat us." "I didn't want to defeat you," Maria replied. "I wanted to free the people you enslaved. And you succeeded. The sector you liberated is still independent. My father spent the rest of his life trying to understand how 3 humans caused so much change." He turned to face her. "I need you to understand something. The Concordat is not what it was. There are factions that want to return to the old ways. Conquest, control, expansion. Others want peace and cooperation. This duel is not just about Earth. It is about the future of the entire Concordat. Maria, listen carefully. If you simply kill Corvan, you prove that humans are just another violent species. The warmongers will use that to justify aggression. But if you can defeat him while showing restraint, showing wisdom." He paused. "Then you prove humanity deserves to stand as equals. So you want me to win without killing. I want you to show the galaxy what humanity can be at its best." Maria looked out at Earth again. No pressure then. Vexenar almost smiled. The silent storm never needed pressure. She just needed a reason. After he left, Maria stood alone in the darkness, watching stars appear over Earth's horizon. Tomorrow she would fight. Tomorrow she would have to become the person she had spent 30 years trying to forget. She whispered to her reflection in the glass, "Just one more time, then I can rest." The arena floated in space between Earth and the Concordat fleet. It was a massive dome, transparent on all sides, filled with artificial terrain, forests, rocks, streams, and open spaces. Billions watched from across the galaxy. Every human on Earth stopped what they were doing to see. Maria stood at one entrance, wearing light armor the Zarketh had provided. It fit surprisingly well. She had chosen a simple blade and a staff, weapons that required skill over strength. Across the arena, Corvan emerged from the opposite entrance. He looked enormous in his dark armor, carrying weapons that seemed too heavy for any human to lift. A Zarketh official's voice echoed through the dome. "Combat begins when the tone sounds. It ends when one fighter yields or cannot continue. Death is permitted but not required." The tone rang out like a bell. Corvan moved fast, faster than something his size should move. He crossed half the arena in seconds, his blade sweeping toward Maria in an arc that would have cut her in half. She wasn't there. Maria had rolled to the side, using a boulder for cover. Corvan's blade struck stone and shattered it. Dust exploded outward. Through the cloud, Maria darted forward, her staff striking at his knee joint, one of the weak points in Zarketh armor. Corvan grunted and spun, faster than she expected. His backhand nearly caught her, but she bent backward, the blow passing inches from her face. She could feel the wind from it. They separated, circling each other. "You are faster than the report suggested," Corvan said. "You're exactly as good as I feared," Maria replied. They clashed again. This time Corvan didn't use raw power. He fought technically, precisely. Every strike was calculated. Every defense was perfect. Maria realized he had been testing her before. Now he was fighting for real. She adapted. Years of cleaning hotel rooms had kept her fit, but this was different. Muscle memory from 3 decades ago awakened. Her body remembered things her mind had tried to forget. She flowed around his attacks, used the terrain, made him work for every inch. The watchers fell silent. This wasn't the brutal beating they expected. It was art. 2 masters pushing each other higher and higher. When Corvan struck high, Maria went low. When he advanced, she redirected his momentum. When she attacked, he countered, and she countered his counter. They fought through the forest section. Trees fell around them. They fought near the stream, water spraying with each impact. They fought in the open area, moving so fast the cameras struggled to track them. Maria found an opening. Corvan had overextended slightly on a thrust. She could have driven her blade into the gap in his armor near his throat. It would have ended the fight. Instead, she struck his wrist, making him drop his weapon, then swept his legs. Corvan hit the ground hard. Maria's blade was at his throat before he could move. "Yield," she said quietly. But Corvan looked past her, his eyes widening. "Above you," Maria's instinct screamed. She threw herself sideways as an explosion tore through the arena's upper section. The transparent dome cracked. Alarms blared. Through the smoke, armed Zarketh soldiers poured in, not officials, not guards, but rebels wearing unmarked armor. "Coup attempt," Corvan growled, getting to his feet. "The hardliners. They are trying to kill the Emperor." Maria saw it instantly. This wasn't about the duel anymore. On the viewing platform where Emperor Vexenear sat with human delegates, more rebels were advancing. If Vexenear died, the Concordat would collapse into civil war. Earth would be caught in the middle. She looked at Corvan. He looked at her. No word were needed. They moved together. Maria's tactical mind took over. Each platform has 3 shooters. I'll draw their fire. You flank left. Corvan didn't question her. He just moved. They operated like they had trained together for years. Maria ran, dodged, led the rebels' fire away from the civilians. Corvan came from their blind side, his massive fists crushing weapons and armor. More rebels appeared. Maria counted quickly. 15, maybe 20. Too many. But she noticed something. The arena's control systems were still active. She sprinted toward the main console, rebels firing at her heels. "Corvan, hold them for 30 seconds. The champion roared and charged into the center of the rebel group. He fought like a storm, keeping all their attention on him. Maria reached the console and activated the arena's training protocols. Suddenly walls rose from the floor, separating rebels from each other. Gravity fields activated, pinning several to the ground. Environmental controls released fog, making it impossible to see. In the chaos, Maria and Corvan picked off the rebels one by one. They protected the viewing platform, protecting both Emperor Vexenear and the human ambassadors. When the last rebel fell, Maria stood, panting, bleeding from a cut on her arm. She had a clear line of sight to Emperor Vexenear, who was exposed and vulnerable. One shot, and the Concordat would fall into chaos. Earth might be safe from their control. Corvan saw the angle. He tensed, unsure what she would do. Maria threw her weapon away and ran toward the Emperor. Not to attack, but as another rebel appeared from behind, weapon raised. She put herself between the assassin and Vexenear. The blast hit her armor, throwing her backward. Corvan crushed the final rebel and caught Maria before she hit the ground. Maria awoke in the medical bay 3 days later. Her entire left side ached, but the Zarketh doctors had done their work well. The burns from the blast were already healing. She sat up slowly and found Emperor Vexenear sitting in a chair beside her bed. "You saved my life," he said simply. "It seemed like the right thing to do," Maria replied, her voice rough. "You could have let me die. Earth would have been free of any threat from us. The Concordat would have torn itself apart in civil war." Maria shook her head. "More people would have suffered. That's not freedom. That's just trading one tragedy for another." Vexenear stood and walked a window. Outside, both Earth and Concordat ships floated peacefully side by side. The footage of the duel has been watched 17 billion times across our worlds. Do you know what they're saying? That I lost because we never finished? No. They are saying they watched Earth's greatest warrior choose to save her enemy instead of killing him. They watched you and Corvan fight together like brothers. They watched you throw away victory to protect others. He turned to face her. "You did not win the duel, Maria Santos. You did something far more important. You won the respect of the entire galaxy." The medical bay door opened. Corvan entered, still wearing bandages from their battle against the rebels. He approached Maria's bed and did something that made her eyes widen. He knelt. "In 10,000 duels, I never found an equal," he said in his deep voice. "Today I found something greater. A warrior who made me question why we fight at all. You have my respect, Maria Santos, and my friendship if you'll accept it." Maria smiled. Stand up, please. I'm nobody special. That is where you are wrong. Vexenaar said. The Concordat High Council has voted. Earth is invited to join as a full member with complete independence and equal voice. Not because you want to fight, but because you showed us what humanity truly is. News of the decision spread across Earth in minutes. Cities erupted in celebration. But in the medical bay, Maria felt only tired relief. She had done what needed to be done. Now she wanted to go home. 2 weeks later, after ceremonies and speeches she barely remembered, Maria stood in the UN Plaza again. Representatives from dozens of alien species were there. They wanted her to be Earth's ambassador. They wanted her to lead humanity's defense forces. They wanted her to train their soldiers, write their strategies, become a symbol. She said no to everything. I did this so I could go back to my life, she told them firmly. Someone else can build the peace. I just opened the door. But humanity needs you, the Secretary General protested. Maria looked at all the important people staring at her. Humanity needs to know that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when necessary, then go back to being ordinary. That's the real strength, knowing when to fight and when to let others lead. They tried to convince her for hours. Finally, Corvan, who had stayed on Earth as the first Concordat ambassador, proposed a compromise. What if you simply taught? Pass on your knowledge to those who will build the future. Maria considered this. Teaching was different from leading. Teaching was helping others find their own way. She agreed, but only part-time. 6 months passed. Maria returned to her job at the hotel. Her manager welcomed her back with tears in his eyes. Her co-workers threw her a small party in the break room. She smiled and thanked them and went back to cleaning rooms. But 3 afternoons a week, she went to a training facility where humans and aliens learned together. She taught them tactics and strategy, yes, but more importantly, she taught them judgment, when to fight and when to talk, when to push forward and when to protect, when to be strong and when to show mercy. A young Zarkaz student once asked her, "What is the most important thing you learned from war?" Maria thought for a long moment that the strongest warrior is the one who never wants to fight, because they understand exactly what's at stake. Anyone can destroy. It takes real strength to build, to protect, to choose peace when violence would be easier. One evening, as she pushed her cleaning cart down the hotel hallway, a news crew found her. They asked if she regretted coming out of retirement. "I regret that it was necessary," she said honestly. "But I don't regret what happened after. Sometimes you have to become what you fear most, just long enough to protect what matters. Then you get to choose who you are again." The reporter pressed, "But you're humanity's greatest hero. Don't you want more recognition?" Maria smiled and gestured at the cart. "I get all the recognition I need when a guest walks into a perfectly clean room and feels comfortable. Every small job done, well, makes the world a little better. That's enough for me." She finished her shift, rode the subway home to her small apartment, and made tea. Through her window, she could see both human and alien ships in the night sky, working together to build something new. Maria Santos, who had ended wars and saved worlds, sat in her quiet apartment and felt genuinely happy. She had been a weapon when necessary. Now she was just a person again. That was the greatest victory of all. The galaxy had learned that Earth's strength wasn't in its weapons or warriors. It was in people like Maria, ordinary people who could rise when needed, then return to kindness when the crisis passed. People who understood that real power was choosing peace after knowing war's true cost. And somewhere in the vast network of the Concordat, the story spread, not a conqueror or destroyer, but of a hotel maid who saved the galaxy and went back to work the next day. That was the most human thing of all.